Welcome to Sister Wives, Season 19, Episode 5, the year of release. And John made a comment about this show that I don't know that I've ever heard. Do you remember what you said? It was better than last week. He used the word better in conjunction with Sister Wives. And blew my mind. So I went to skip over. People have been giving me a really hard time about Mykelti. People are like, you're so awful, you're a terrible person. Not so much on YouTube.
We don't care.
Well, but here's the thing. The first 20 minutes are about Mykelti. So I talk about Mykelti.
Get your barf bags ready, because it's gross.
And a number of people are like, she's just a baby. She's only 28. I would remind you that the footage that we see in Season 1, Robin is roughly 31 years old in that episode. So she is only 3 years older than Mykelti is. Or was, or whatever. But anyway, so I'm talking about it because she's a huge chunk of the show.
Unfortunately.
One thing I decided to start tracking, though, is this is late 2022. January 11th, 2023 is when they announced they were going to do a Patreon. So that's something I'm going to track over the rest of the season, is to see if we can see any change in Cody's attitude toward them after they did the Patreon. In real life, in 2024,
they no longer speak.
There was just an article that was like, Mykelti drags father or something like that. I don't remember what the exact wording was from her Patreon, because she's basically saying he needs to be accountable for his part in all this. And she said that she doesn't really see them anymore because it was just a fully one-sided. Does not surprise me in the least bit. Fully one-sided. She had to call them. She had to visit, except for this, I guess, this episode where they come and visit. They wouldn't let the kids come and stay. They wouldn't, you know, that kind of thing. But I'm going to track that. And we got news. Christine and Janelle were invited to Us Weekly's, like, reality stars event. And while they were there, they did a whole bunch of interviews. And between Access Hollywood, Extra Online, E! News, all of those, in there they said that this season is going to cover a longer period of time than normal. Very exciting. So for all the people who've been saying they need to catch up, they need to catch up, they need to catch up.
Like us.
They're going to catch up about as much as they can. As near as I can tell, 6 months is about as close as we can get, which does make sense because the season's almost 6 months long. So that's about as close as we're going to get to being caught up. But what Christine said in a couple different places was the season starts with her meeting David, which was last week.
I wonder what's going to happen with that. Going
through the marriage, which we saw at the end of season 18, to about 6 months after, which based on the math that I did, roughly around May. Maybe April, maybe June. I don't know. But it's going to go through that, which makes sense because, Lord rest his soul, Garrison's passing is going to be included in this. And that was in March. I remember because I was getting in the car the day to go visit my mom before she passed away. And the news came out. And I remember being kind of like so shocked. And then having to get in the car and make one of the most difficult drives of my life, the most difficult weekends of my life. And it's like, wow, really intense weekend. So I remember that my mom passed away March 13th. And it was, I think, about a week before that. So my guess is that it's going to go through that timeline. It makes sense, but that'll get us mostly catched up. I have no idea if we will have a longer than normal season. It doesn't seem like they're cutting anything out to make speed the season up.
Well, they're adding fights from.
We started right before Thanksgiving, and we are now the day before Christmas. So we have gone 5 episodes in 1 month. But they seem to do a lot of stuff. I feel like last season was similar in that it was like really super slow. And then it was like February, April, June, May, back to February, forward to in the terms of the timeline being screwed up, that's been a case for a long time. So let's go ahead and dive up. We see, I made a big point of saying it was really strange to me that, you know, we talk about every single episode. They talked about how close Robin and Mykelti were, but we got Cody didn't say a word about Mykelti. It was just Robin, 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 Robin. Well, now we got our Cody-Mykelti moment.
Cut to Baldylocks.
So they're on the drive up. They're so excited. They're going to see Ace and Archer. They are fraternal twins, not identical twins. I have to say they do not look that much alike. For the fact that all babies look alike to me. they did not look that much alike. You could easily see that they were fraternal twins. She's super excited to show them off. Little Avalon, they come in. A lot of people picked up on the fact that Tony referred to Cody as Cody and not Grandpa, which, I mean, when my dad came and visited, we referred to him as Bappa, which is what the grandpa name that he ended up with. It's supposed to be Papa, but it ended up with Bappa. And then, so that was noticeable. Also, Avalon didn't want to hug him. Good for them, though, not forcing it. Yes. Offering an alternative such as a fist pound. Big fan of that. Good job, Mykelti and Tony. And she was happy to do that. It might have just been that Robin was there semi-recently and she remembers her better. Could also be that genuinely he shows up once every 8, 9, 10 months and Avalon just didn't remember him. Either way, I won't read too much into it because my son can be, he's gotten really into a big handshaking phase. Favorite part of church is to go around and greet people. And his new thing is to stop people and tell them he likes their glasses, their shoes, their purse, their sweater. We're trying to just get it in and out as quick as possible. And he's like, hey, good morning. I like your glasses. They're always like caught off guard. Except the guy at the skate park and was like, cool skateboard.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we hear more about how Mykelti's so neutral. Mykelti is, and Cody talks about, the way he talks is like if an alien came down to Earth and tried to compliment a person, but wasn't sure which adjectives you normally use, because he's like,
loyal.
She has a very special personality. Or something about her being special, and I was like, I'm not saying that she's not a special individual, it's just the way that, yeah, like when he talks about like his daughter being really loyal, and you're just sort of like, that's not normally those aren't normally things that you value in young children, unless I guess you're like living in Game of Thrones or something. And so he does talk about really liking Mykelti. Robin makes a comment about how, well, I think Mykelti can see the truth. And I'm like, oh, we'll see how this goes once the Patreon starts. But they're really setting up this dynamic of Mykelti is on Cody and Robin's side. And then later on we have a huge section with Gabe, who I have a lot to say about Gabe, man. He is, if you ever want to have a poster child for therapy, I'd be like, let me introduce you to Gabe, who says that therapy is great and seems to have his head on his shoulders more than 95% of people I meet on a day-to-day basis. Man, that kid is like, he is like smart and stable, and it was a real joy to hear him speak, and I wish him all the best in the world. Cody is in his blue, I've been tracking the shirts because
he's in his blue blouse from last week.
So the first 3 episodes, we saw him in that purpley lilac number, and now we're in the blue number. And I'm only tracking it for the sake of, I've had people, I don't know, say that, I don't know, different things. That they have a, because I said like, the stuff in the blue shirt are all said within the same time period. And people are like, no, they have one outfit and they wear it for the whole season every single time. And I'm like, there are shows that do that, like a lot of reality competition shows do that, but I don't think that's what's happening. So we're already on to shirt number 2. And he's like, then
in episode what?
5.
It's shirt number 2, episode 5.
Yeah, and so then he has this big section, which was baffling to me, where we talk about the house. He's like, oh, Robin and I have been looking at bigger houses. And I was like, oh, you guys could move in and you guys could stay with us. A bunch of people pointed out that they probably just want, they want to get back to people paying into the family pot for him to control.
Right.
And
yeah, whose money is he going to steal now?
And yeah, and then everybody, I'm sure it's one of those, his household, his rules. It might be a way to like, and that's when I was like, wait, have they done the Patreon yet? Because they're making a buttload of money from the Patreon. Just to be clear, we have a Patreon, so I live in a glass house, I cannot be throwing stones.
We also would like to make a buttload of money on Patreon.
Speaking of buttloads of money. No, a reminder, we do watch the episode right here. Right now we have to watch it live because Max hasn't put it on until the next morning, so it's very stressful getting here. We can't pause it. We have our live reactions. You can watch that on Patreon. You get this commercial free. We make sure that we respond to every single comment on our Patreon, stuff like that. So there's that. But I was like, oh, that's when we look at the Patreon. Because I was like, oh, if they're getting Patreon money, Cody was looking at that. But it's not quite yet that they're getting Patreon money. But Cody's talking about how he'd love to have them live with them. Robin scoots in with a, well, no, they need to have their own lives, which is 100% true. But there was a small part of me that was like, oh, she doesn't want more people in on her territory.
Right.
But
like the film crew in her house. To get money.
But I was shocked that they were already looking at new houses. So this last week,
house is off the market.
The house is off the market. I have to say, as far as I know, I was the first person to notice that. It was a total fluke. Someone said something about the house, and I was like, oh, I'll check. And it was down from Zillow, and I made a video about it. And the next day, it was down from Realtor, and then a bunch of other creators. Well, I think almost instantly, other creators heard it, and then they used their individual researching skills to do up videos. And now it's on people. There's a very strong rumor going around that it's because of Christine's lawsuit. So far, I haven't seen any proof.
Christine or Janelle's?
Christine, the child custody stuff.
Now that's what I want to see.
Now that's filed. That for sure is happening. Now Janelle says she wants to get a lawyer involved. There's no confirmation that she ever did. Now, knock on wood, I want her to. And in fact, in those interviews that she did this week, she said that she has had contact with Meri because they worked on something together. And the leading theory on that is it could be a lawyer trying to settle things with Coyote Pass, which please let that be the case. My concern is that they're just going to say, oh, well, nothing we can do, and just not even try to fight it. I know that there's no guarantee that they could do anything, but they did have a business together. Depending on how...
verbal contracts all over 19 seasons.
You know, depending on how the money was declared tax-wise, they might,
An amazing business that Robin came up with.
You know, stuff like that, depending on how it is. It might be, you know, they might have things like, whether they declared it as a gift or a loan or stuff like that. I don't really know. But we're hoping that's the case. So then, but it was interesting to me because during the course of me talking about the house being off the market and what that might mean, so I've had people say it could have just been that the way the realtor did it, it's sold. We'll find that out eventually if that's the case. It could be that they pulled it off the market because it just wasn't getting offers like they expected or hoped it would. It could be that it could be related to Christine's lawsuit, but so far I haven't seen any proof of that. There's a number of people who are saying that when they went through something similar, that was something that was in case, but we don't have any proof of that. But during the course of that, someone who was a real estate agent pulled up a bunch of information about the house and sent it to me, and it was basically show that they had pulled out so much equity at this house. They probably owe more on it than they originally paid. So it's very unlikely they could sell it for significantly less. But they are, but the point
Cody
was...
had to buy all those assets, you know, like Clay prints and stuff that's never going to resell for the original price.
It would...
Like that really expensive four-wheeler.
On the list, and Janelle has been saying that he is constantly making excuses about how he has to buy assets, which does make me wonder if he's trying to, I don't know...
dodge taxes?
Go in for a bankruptcy or something? If he declared a bankruptcy, it would be so unsurprising. That's the case. Okay, then there's this big section... warning you right now.
Oh, it's like...
I'm going to kind of skip over it because I have...
what people want to do in their own life...
their business.
Do it. Just don't bring me into it, please.
There was just a lot of detail about this. And it's like the same way that I don't go into huge detail about different surgeries I've had or things like that. But I'm just going to warn you. I have a very weak stomach, and so does John. Well, John doesn't normally.
For this kind of thing.
So she goes about how she's not having... And Mykelti's already been in hot water because she posted a bunch of stuff about what she thinks causes postpartum depression. And it was a little...
it's very stupid.
It was not so great. And so I'm not going to get into that, but she's already kind of hot water. But she says she's having no postpartum depression because she ate her placenta. This time she got it encapsulated, so she's taking it in pills. But the first time, I apologize for saying this, she just bit into the placenta and had a bite, and then she took the rest of it, made a smoothie, and drank it.
Are we good? So there's that. fun stuff.
I'm so sorry. I had a genuine reaction to the smoothie part, and and they
you could have not said that again.
And they showed a picture of it.
Oh, they did.
With
Anyway, it's very gross. Disgusting.
With a bite mark in it. Okay, that's all I can say. Oh, I am so sorry. It's okay if you think I'm faking, but I swear.
This is genuine.
I swear it's genuine.
Oh.
I have a very weak stomach. Okay, then they cut over to Meri. Meri saying, no, no, no. Christine being like, I have never done it. But now I wish I had known. It sounds so amazing. And I'm like, okay, I'm very proud of Christine for being so supportive of her daughters, but I need a little less of it. Then they cut to Robin, and Robin's like, I'm going to blow your minds. I did it first. And I'm like, okay. She's really got to one-up everyone.
Blow my mind? Her telling the truth and not fake crying a whole episode. That would...
And then we got this whole big section, and I thought it was weird because we know this story. So there's this section where Tony's like, is it true that in the community, the AUB, you would pass around babies all the time and breastfeed? And my first thought is... Like
randos. Like, here's my baby, rando boob, go for it.
Yeah, and what was weird to me is my first thought was, oh, they talked about how Maddie, when she was a baby, was not growing. She was like 1 year old and very small.
Failure to thrive.
Very, very small. And so Meri breastfed her a little bit. And it was funny because they've shared that story on, I'm guessing that Maddie does not have a great relationship with Meri. That's not guessing, we know that. And has asked for that story not to be repeated because it was weird to me that no one acknowledged that has happened because Christine was real, like, she was all open to the other stuff, but now she's like, oh my gosh, we never did that. And then Janelle was sort of like, well, I've never done it. I never had enough milk. And then Meri's like, well, I have done it, but it wasn't like for fun. It was for medical reasons. And then Robin's like, yes, it happens all the time. Oh, it's so embarrassing. And it's so funny because this is one of the reasons why I like the single couch thing at times is because they can't keep their story. They don't have a chance to coordinate their stories when they're all in different places. But I guess it's one of those things where, now they have formula. I assume they did back then. They just didn't want to use it. For thousands of years, if you had wet nurses, if you wouldn't just let a baby die. So it's like, I would have done that if it was somehow on a desert island and you had no other choice. But it was kind of odd to me that they all acted like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness, when they've discussed it before, as opposed to being like, well, like more like what Christine did eventually say, where she was like, well, or even Robin said, like, we didn't do it for fun. We didn't like just be like, oh, here, have my baby, I'll have yours and swap for that. But yeah, I don't know. There's kind of a weird off vibe in it. I didn't quite get what was going on. Okay. And then Cody goes on and on about how he loves the grandchildren. Reminder, he has not seen Evie since she was born. So I guess I wasn't clear in that. He was there for her birth, but then hasn't gone to see her since. They did come out at some point, I believe, and visit for one of the holidays. I'd have to go look at what it was. But he hasn't gone back. And that's a big, I've heard a lot of people say and complain about, they have a family with a bunch of kids and then their grandparents are, the grandparents are like, well, you can come and visit us. And they're like, yeah, but kids are like a whole thing to move. You got to have this and you got to have that. You got to have those special stuff. You got to get on an airplane versus like grandma and grandpa coming to visit. And it's like, they're adults. They bring their book and their slippers and they're all set. So, okay. So then we catch up with David. It's his second date. She has now told him we saw this entire clip in a sneak peek. So I feel like I've already talked about this, even though I have not done so. They went on the second date. She said, hey, I was a polygamist. He's like, hey, my sisters are involved. And she's like, do you want to be a polygamist? And he's like, oh, absolutely not, which is the perfect answer. It's really sad to me because she said, it seems like we're getting along. They have all these cute selfies. She's like, but he hasn't held my hand or kissed me, so I want to make sure that he's actually physically interested in me. And that is such a, like, if you have any doubt about...
A Cody scar?
If you have any doubt about the repercussions of being married to Cody, it's all those years of him saying he wasn't attracted to her. had 6 kids and at least 1 miscarriage, so they certainly weren't having any issues with that part, at least till the end on his end. But yeah, so that's super sad. But as near as I can tell, that worked out for them. So they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. So now we have this long discussion between Janelle and Gabriel. He's the deep thinker. He has been using the counselors at his university. And like I said, I'm really proud of them. I'm really proud of them talking about that so openly, talking about it so positively, talking about how the whole family needs therapy. I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm a real big fan of people in general thinking deeply about what's going on with their life and not just constantly reacting. Cody, you know what I mean? Like,
you mean rewriting history?
I think it's great as a young man. He's talking about it, like all that stuff. I do not have high enough praise for Gabriel, and I do hope that he can at least have some comfort in. I know that when I've gone through a situation like this, having people say, yes, I believe you, you're right, whatever, I believe you about this person being bad, was comforting. I hope that he at least has the comfort of knowing that everything he said, I think the entire fandom would agree with. Like, there's not a thing he said that I haven't said, the fans haven't said, that they can't, you know what I mean? Like, they were saying all the same stuff, and it to the degree that I'm like, I hope it's, So they talk about the fact they haven't there's not a lot of new retreading through the information. Mostly what we find out about this, in the most general sense, is he had some really wise things to say about what was happening, and that he's at peace with the fact that he can't change his father or Robin.
Oh, but rest assured, Cody forgives him.
Yeah, I mean, but it's even things like, he's like, I think Cody made the right choices during COVID for the family that he actually cares about. Like, if you're talking about Robin, and he's like, Robin, I think she makes this up as a form of self-preservation. It's like, yeah, I think that's a very astute observation. All of that. So, they go through the whole thing. There's not been much contact since COVID. Cody felt that he needed an apology. Robin needed an apology, and eventually it morphed into like, we just need to have this conversation. But it sounds like every conversation is kind of the same. Of like, you're not loyal, you're not doing things right, you need to apologize.
But according to Cody, who always tells the truth, as we know, that conversation never happened or took place ever, never, ever, ever.
Janelle says, and I would stitch this on a sampler pillow if I was such a person, that he's like, Cody's attitude is this most perfect, wonderful, amazing person has been wronged and disrespected, and we all need to apologize, meaning Robin. They're going to make breakfast, and first they get a little dig in about how particular Cody is about everything. And then Gabe just kind of says, I'm just kind of okay with Cody being gone. If I don't have a father, that's okay. It sounds like a really healthy boundary of like, if this is heartbreaking, but like, if this is who my father's going to be, then I don't want him in my life, as opposed to being like, I'm going to continue to bang my head against this wall and waste all my time and energy. And it's just one of those things where you kind of, anyone in I think almost everyone who's watching has had that situation, maybe not with a parent or a sibling or a family member, but with a coworker or a friend, or broken up with an ex-boyfriend or something, where you've just had to say, this relationship is not healthy, and any attempt to fix it has only made things worse, and I just have to be done. So I think we can all relate to that. They talk about how Cody takes him on a business trip, used to take him on business trips, which we laughed about because we were like,
oh, Cody, yeah, because he does business.
But based on what she said, I think she meant before the show, like when he was when he used to sell.
He's a traveling salesman.
Well, he sold billboards previously, advertising space on billboards. So they talk about how he was a good dad all through high school, and then the family really started spreading out. I have some questions about high school, because remember how awful it was for Gabe to move high schools, but also she made reference to the fact that even back in Vegas, the boys were complaining about inequitable time, but she was fine. So she was like, because they were complaining kind of on her behalf that he's not spending enough time with you, Mom. And she was like, well, I'm fine, so you guys can be fine. But it does not sound like the boys were 100% fine through high school, and this only started with COVID. I mean, there's been many indications that they have had a problem with this for a long time. And many of the kids have said basically Robin came in and they didn't go from 1 in 3 days. It like instantly changed and he was just never there.
Well, it's not like he always tucked her kids in at night to bed every night.
Right.
Or took them to school every day. Oh, wait. That is what happened as soon as Robin joined the family. See you later, other kids. I got someone special that I care about now.
And then Cody starts lying. And you know he's lying.
No.
You know he's lying because his mouth's moving.
Oh, yeah. That's
No. So then he says...
pretty basic tell for him.
Janelle says something about the whole patriarchy thing being a real turnoff. And he's like, I was never into patriarchy. I never said anything about patriarchy. I just got mad one time and said it. And you're like, yes, that is what people are referring to. That is the whole point. And it was not one particular time. He started talking about running your will into mine, which the rolling into, I always think he's saying wheel. Like the wheels in the bus go, rolling your wheel into mine. And the first time I heard it, I was so confused but then they also talk about how polygamy is like a wheel and he's in the center and they're the spokes and they support the family, which is and so I remember being there and being like, before I realized he's saying will, running your will into mine, but he goes wheel, running your wheel into mine. So we just talk about it all the time, and we saw it, and we've been mocking him, and now he's like, I never said it, I only said it this once, and you're like, that sentence is not even consistent with itself. I was gonna say cohesive, but
copacetic.
It's not even consistent with itself. So Janelle's wrong. I never said anything about patriarchy.
So circle your donkeys and get the beer and Skittles.
And he's been pushing that. He's been pushing that for several seasons. I'm in charge. I'm in charge of this family. And Janelle's been saying for seasons, that's not what I signed up for. That was, let's roll the footage from season 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 where he was saying.
And besides all that, we know Robin wears the pants.
Yeah, and so then we talk about how Gabe says, a lot of people family disagree with me on this, but I feel like he did make the right choice during COVID for the family that he prioritized. Which is, as my mother would have said, damning with faint praise. He's right because he only cared for one family, and therefore he made the right decision because he was like, F off on the rest of you. And he felt like he only prioritized Robin. And then Cody says, this does not even make sense because Cody talks about how he got really intense when he got COVID. That's not true.
He almost died. I mean, he was on death's door.
No. He saw the Grim Reaper, John. And there are many, many people who died from COVID. There are many people who suffered greatly. There are many people who had long COVID and is serious.
But someone who wasn't even admitted to a hospital is not one of those people.
He was never that sick, and he didn't even go to the hospital. He took Robin to the hospital,
who also was not admitted,
and I'm sure it was not a great experience, but that is not. He saw the Grim Reaper coming for him.
I wish they would have met.
But also in the timeline of COVID. At that point, he was barely speaking to people because remember that was when he forgot Gabe's birthday because he called to find out what.
Gabe's birthday.
On Gabe's birthday. This was so long after the damage had already been done. So now he's trying to rewrite it that his behavior was a direct result of him getting COVID and nearly dying. And it was like, and he even said, he's like, you know what? Maybe it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was, which also is not quite correct. The problem wasn't that he was taking it seriously. It was that he had this patchwork set of rules that only applied when they were restrictive on his other family.
Because that he didn't want to see
and
or
lenient
be with.
On his own. And his own kids.
Well, I mean, since it was Janelle's kids who brought COVID to the family. Oh, wait, no, wasn't.
And then there was this other big, huge lie where Janelle and Gabe are talking about how he told the kids that he wished he hadn't married the moms, that he had waited for Robin. And he's like, that's a lie, that's more gossip, there's all this. Now.
Didn't he, in that same breath, also say he always loved all his wives?
he said, yeah, I loved and considered my whole family when I made these decisions. And so we're like, oh, so you didn't love any of them? But then he used the word love. But what I want to point out, so somebody really got on me a couple of weeks ago because I said that Robin said something that was not word for word exact quote. So I'm going to say this, which is Cody has not, I have not heard Cody word for word say, I wish I had not married any of my original 3 wives and I had waited for Robin. But I have heard him say every other variation of that phrase. He has said that Robin was the only one he's ever loved. He has said he never loved and never should have married Meri. He said he's never loved Janelle. He's never loved Christine. Janelle's the one that he will go back and forth on. One episode he'll say he loved her, he can love her again. The next one he'll say he never loved her. Then he'll say, he uses love with her quite a bit, but then he'll back up and say, she begged to be, they forced their way into the family. I shouldn't have married them. So as far as I'm concerned, I have heard him say, I do not love my original. He has said repeatedly, I'm being punished for crimes I have never committed. My only crime is not loving their mothers.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, remember that.
so whoever it was who got all over me about not word for word, you're correct. I have not heard him say those exact words
and we
in
don't
that exact
care.
order, but I have heard him say every variation of that phrase. And in fact, at the end of the episode, he tells Meri, I shouldn't have married you. That was a huge mistake. And he has said the same about Christine. I don't know if he has said, but here's the deal. All of that, ignore all that, I 100% believe that he told the kids something that would, in a court of law, stand up to this argument. That he has only loved Robin, and we've been hassling him, not just we, but the fans have been hassling him for years about how when he says he never loved their moms, he shouldn't have married them. He is saying, you kids are not sufficient. Every one of the wives, Meri, Janelle, and Christine, have said, I don't regret my marriage because I got my kids out of this, because I have grown. In fact, that's the next section where Meri is saying, I'm just making sure that this is the right section, because that Meri, the very next section is the Meri release section, and she is talking about how I don't regret this marriage because it made me who I am today. And I think anyone who's gone through something really hard and gotten to the other side of it sufficiently, I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying a lot of people who really regret a terrible situation still say, I'm so thankful for my kids or for what I learned or whatever. And I'll tell you what, that shows a certain sign of growth, that you have constantly been growing into a better person. And that's why Cody is okay with getting rid of it, is because he has learned and gained nothing. So that's a hold on Janelle and Gabe's conversation. We cut over to Meri. Something I was genuinely excited to watch, which is Meri getting her spiritual release. I was so hoping we could get some sort of even diplomatic statement from the AUB, but it is zero surprise that they did not have any of it on camera and gave no official statement or any of that. There's a great lady on here on YouTube. I don't know what her YouTube is. I can't think of her handle offhand, whose father is the prophet that gave the release to Meri. She has since left the faith, and she does some Sister Wives content. But she's great. We're mutuals on TikTok. I just can't. I know it's like Notebook 40404 or something like that. I'm sorry, hon. I can't remember your name, your handle. So Meri texted Cody. She said, I'm going to get the release in 2 weeks.
And he got right back to her.
And if you want to get involved or have any say in it, you can. And he just never texted her back. Once again, we had a whole bunch of waffling from Cody because he's like, Robin begged me to, I wanted to tell Meri to hit the hills years ago, but Robin begged me to pray for it. And I was like, I thought just 2 episodes you said you couldn't have left her because it was the religion's fault. Now it's Robin's fault? And then he says, then he says, I wanted to leave her, but I was scared of what she would do.
But it's okay, because she hurt their feelings, because she didn't go to Christmas with them and just shunned them. Because, Meri's so bad.
So she never heard back. She went up to Utah. She met with the leaders of the church. She said it was a very difficult meeting. They did give her a release. Cody's like, she basically, Cody's like, yeah, they called to tell me I got the release, and then they said a bunch of stuff I don't want to repeat. And then Meri's like, yeah, they gave it to me for abandonment because he abandoned me, which is exactly, she absolutely nailed it when she said that what he did was he just kind of equivalently have ghosted her so that he could say, hey, my hands are clean, I didn't end the relationship, which is exactly what I had been saying for years and all of us have been saying, which is he didn't want to say it because he didn't want anybody to point to and say that's when he said it. Of course, he did a lousy job at that because he said plenty of awful things, but he wanted to back her into her being the one to initiate it so that maybe so she couldn't get a spiritual release, maybe so that he could just...
So he wouldn't be culpable.
So that he wouldn't ruin his reputation, I don't know. But they talk a little bit about their belief is that the spiritual release means that they will not be tied to each other for eternity. And then Janelle and Christine were terrible sister wives and they drug Meri through the dirt. No.
By saying, we totally support Meri and we understand what she did and we're happy for her.
Yeah.
Terrible sister wives.
And then Cody's like, Robin made me stay. Meri's so dangerous, I had to stay. I knew that she would like tell people and make me look bad.
And then in the next 5 minutes, him and Robin had the nerve to cry about she didn't want to come to the Christmas with us.
He didn't.
Well,
Robin did. But Cody also said, Robin goes, he's shed tears over this marriage. This is heartbreaking for him. And then the next second he's like, it should have happened earlier, but I was scared that what she would do, so I didn't end it earlier. And it's like, okay, I love the single couch interviews. Like, it would be funny to force them to say this in front of each other. And I hope we do get some of that at some point, like when we did the watchbacks and the lookbacks where they did it together and she was like correcting him the whole time. But it's also freaking hilarious when they cut one of her things, like, Cody's been heartbroken. And then they cut to Cody and him being like, screw that bee. I don't care at all. I think it's hilarious. So then Janelle's like, hey, good for her. I didn't even know we could ask because we haven't been part of the church in forever. I don't really feel like I need to ask, but that's great for her. And then Christine's saying, I'm not part of the religion. I'm not involved with the people. I don't feel like I needed to ask for it, but great for Meri. Which I knew they would do. And frankly, I think now that Meri did not handle it great when Christine left, but I'm hoping that now we'll get a little better version. Okay. So now we cut back to Janelle and Gabe, and they're clarifying that Cody goes and sees Savannah every couple months. If she needs him, I saw this clip somewhere, if she needs him, he'll show up. So if the car is broken, he'll come over and bring over a car. But if she doesn't call him, she won't hear from him for months. And when she does hear from him, they just go out, they talk about music because they share a taste in music, and that's kind of it. In 2024... in the interviews that she did recently with Christine, she says that Savannah hasn't really spent time with her dad this year, meaning 2024. I assume they saw each other at Garrison's memorial service and funeral, but it's sounding like this, they see each other every few months, is not true in this current year. She said that she's already said that when she walks down the aisle, she'll have her brothers do it. She's not engaged or anything. It's just, you know, it's one of those things you think about is like, if I, on the out with my father, what would this, especially with her brother's wedding recently, she probably said something there. Oh my gosh, I'm like, I can't read any of this. So Gabe talks a little bit about Robin and says that she definitely has this victim complex. And then he says, another thing, he says, you know, but I understand why she does that. It's this protective measure for her where she makes herself the victim in every situation. And I can feel really sad for her, but that doesn't change that I'm not going to have a relationship with her. And he's like, you know, the biggest problem is that I don't have a relationship with Robin's kids anymore. I used to hang out with Aurora all the time. I used to always make sure that I check out, you know, watch out for Dayton. He's like, but it doesn't surprise me that this division falls along party lines. And I'm like, oh.
Super sad.
So sad. I hope the fact that he's right gives him some comfort, at least, that he can feel like, I know what's happening. It's very sad and difficult, but I don't have to wonder what went wrong. And then Janelle talks about the fact that she's like, a lot of my kids are really leery of Robin. It feels like she's just waiting for them to say something so she can twist it around and turn it into why this is bad for her or her kids, which is 100% what I see. Like, if nobody needs my opinion on this, but that's what the whole channel is. But I agree. I mean, this is incredibly astute. It's I'm really surprised that they can even be this objective about it. And then Cody cuts to his whole, the last 2 times Robin called Janelle, it was begging for a relationship. And someone reminded me of after Cody and Janelle's fight, Robin said that she called Janelle and basically begged her to give it more time. And Robin was kind of like, this has nothing to do with you. Like, give it. And I was wondering if that was one of the 2 times. But it's like, there's no evidence that Robin has ever sought out a relationship with Janelle. Ever. So it's like, too little too late, even if I believed it was real.
Which we don't.
Which we don't. And then he calls her a relationship coward, and it's like, if anyone's a coward in this whole family, it's you, buddy. And then Gabe's like, you know what, I don't respect her, and I think that's maybe some of her problems with us, is that we no longer respect her. I want to have a relationship with her kids, but, you know, not with Cody and Robin. And then Janelle in the interview is like, you know, he's just at peace with the fact that he's not going to have a relationship with them. And then Gabe was like, you know, last time I saw him, he's like, Cody told him, you're not loyal, just like your mom. And then Cody said that never happened. And Janelle's like, loyal's a 2-way street. And I just think that's such a weird word to fixate on, because if I was to describe you as loyal, I would use it exclusively in the sense of, like, you don't look at other women in a sexual manner, and you've certainly never been involved with another woman. But for me, like, I don't need you to agree with me on everything. I would want you to see kind of my point of view. But it's just such a weird, like, I refer to our dog as loyal. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a weird word.
Well, those other wives were panting like dogs to get into the family, right? According to Cody.
And then Janelle's like, you know, I stuck it out with him because until he was a bad dad, which to me implies she's been over with Cody long before COVID.
Yep.
And then just kind of Janelle's like, everyone needs therapy. And Gabe's like, yes, everyone does need therapy. So, okay, the rest of the episode. So everything else was like huge, huge sections of notes. And then the last 8 minutes were Robin, and I just don't buy it.
Crying about being a victim.
She's like, this is my first Easter without the rest of the family. Well, guess what? Last Christmas, I said Easter, the last Christmas, only Meri came. And you could have had Meri at Easter. I didn't see you crying on Easter about how...
And second Christmas.
No one's here for Easter. Because you didn't... Did she invite her? I don't think she even invited her for Easter. But the whole point is, it's hard for me to... When Meri's saying she doesn't call for months and months, she doesn't invite me to stuff, it's hard for me to be like, oh no, you're not there for Christmas, but you didn't invite her over the whole year. And, you know, it just felt so... It was 1 a.m. Christmas Eve. She's in her bathroom crying. And I'm sorry, I am a bad person. I just didn't believe any of it. I didn't believe this was anything other than a performance. I do think she's sad. I think that she feels like she lost her place in the community because she used to be basically head wife of a big polygamous family, which is a huge, huge priority. For all of our discussions about she never liked polygamy as a kid, she was part of the community and she got her values from that. And being part of a big polygamous family was something she wanted and she no longer has. And I think she's mad about that. Do I think she actually cares about the individual people? I don't.
Yeah, I mean, her.
I remember so starkly when she forced everyone to come over for Ari's, I think it was her birthday, and then everyone got exposed to COVID. They didn't catch COVID that time, but the housekeeper had exposed, the nanny had exposed the whole family to COVID, and then they had that party that night, and so they could have spread it. They didn't, you know, they didn't take responsibility for that. But I remember how uncomfortable everybody felt.
But he was never going to forgive his kids if the boys brought it over.
Because it felt like, yes, correct. Because what it felt like was the rest of the family was the audience that was supposed to sit on the audience while Robin got to perform on stage as head polygamous wife. That's what a lot of those gatherings felt like. Everyone felt uncomfortable, and no one was having a good time, and Robin was in charge of everything, but everybody else had to do the work. And I'm like, I mean, I'm still mad because they showed footage of the big family, and it was of the gifts that Meri gave all the kids. All the kids are opening up. Remember, Meri used to make every single kid like pajamas every year. Or I think last year she did blankets, and it was always at her house on Christmas Eve. And she would have made all this stuff, and then everybody would wear their pajamas, and then they would all celebrate Christmas. Which to me is just insane, because I made one outfit in junior high for my sewing class, and it took like 4 months. So the fact that she made, you know, a dozen sets, I know, I see it. There's a wasp got in the house, and I can feel John hyperdrive.
I'm about to get murderous, so all up in here.
We're almost done. So I was like, they didn't even show anything that Robin did. They showed Meri stuff. And then last season, remember, Meri was going to invite, she's like, well, what if I invited all of the kids that are in town to my house on Christmas Eve? And Robin was like, no, it's not safe. It's not safe. And then they said, well, you're welcome to come over. If you don't want us at the B&B, at your place, you can come over to the B&B. And Cody's like, I have a house. I'm not going to some neutral location. And it's like, okay, well then I don't want to hear about how I'm constantly reaching out. I'm constantly trying. When you won't go to, your rules are, you have to come onto my turf and follow my rules. And so it's like, yeah, so I can't read this. Something about let's go. Oh, Cody's basically like, I'm sick of talking about all this. And this is my whole thing that I feel like I'm saying every single episode, and they just won't acknowledge, which is, if these people never loved you, never welcomed you, never was awful to your kids, never welcomed your kids, then why are you so sad it's over? Do you want to go open the door and let him out?
Too late.
Oh, you used my book.
It's okay.
My brand new journal. I won't write it because it's nice and clean. And who wants to write in a brand new clean journal? You just buy new journals.
Well, now they're...
Anyway. So how, if they're so awful, and Cody never loved them and never cared about him and wished he'd never married him, then why aren't they ecstatic? Why aren't they so happy? Why isn't Robin saying...
Because it doesn't fit the new narrative that they're rewriting history with.
Well, the whole thing is that they...
Like, he's got hair.
Well, I mean, that I think it's this conflict of, I want people in the church to think that we're so miserable, and we want people to pity us because we're so sad. But also, I never loved them. Plus, also, they were always mean to me. And it's just not consistent. If I was a development editor for this book, I would say, I can't really, everything is conflicting. So anyway, then we get into... Janelle and Christine saying it's time to make new traditions. It's time to make new Christmas traditions. Looks like the next episode is a Christmas episode. So Meri is sort of going, we see our sneak peek, and Mary's like, no, I'm not going to their house for Christmas. Like, what are you talking about? And what else was happening? We see some Christmas footage.
We'll see it next week.
We'll see it next week. So thank you for joining us. Have a good day. Bye.